Hi, hello, how are you doing? This is Cuppa Tea Tarot. I'm T, and I'm just gonna go ahead and get right into it. We're back with another tag. Today's tag was created by Sarah at Smart Reiki and Tarot, and thank you, Sarah, for tagging me. This is called hashtag Cinematic Tarot Decks, and the point of this tag is to find decks in your collection that fit a particular genre of film, like horror and fantasy and sci-fi, etc., etc. And these are supposed to be decks that have a very cinematic, it's in the name, feel to them, that tell a story that might even have world building. And I love decks that have world building. And alongside that, I'm going to be showing a movie or other piece of media that reminds me of the deck that I chose for that genre. So let's get started. The first genre is horror, and as soon as I was watching Sarah's video, I was thinking, okay, a horror-themed deck that tells a story. Tarot of Haunted House, of course. It follows the story of this one right here as she goes through all of these trials and tribulations and, well, horrors. While she goes through this haunted house, she meets this really well thought out cast of characters. And when the deck is in order, you really follow her story from beginning to end. Sarah chose this deck as well, so to do something different, I am actually going to also go with the Zombie Tarot. This deck also does an amazing job at storytelling and world building. As you can probably obviously see, this deck follows the story of the zombie apocalypse as it occurs in this very like kitschy 1950s mid-century world. And when the deck is in order, you will actually see that there is a progression from the beginning of the zombie apocalypse where there's all this panic and fear and chaos, really. And then as it goes along, you see the humans kind of starting to learn how to coexist with the zombies. Well, as I say coexist in quotes because they kind of end up keeping the zombies as pets, which is, but anyway, it's funny, it's cheesy. It reminds me of those really corny zombie movies of like the 40s and 50s, like Plague of the Zombies. So it's not really scary. It's horror in appearance only, really. So that is the Zombie Tarot for my horror themed deck. The second genre is sci-fi, and this is the reason why I was so excited to do this tag because just 2 weeks ago, I got a deck that is perfect for the sci-fi genre. It is sci-fi in a deck, and it is called the Neon Moon Tarot. It is by Pixel Occult. It was one of my favorite deck creators, and the whole deck is just this cyberpunk post-apocalyptic robots have taken over the world, type of setting. And I mean, just look at the color palette. It is so Blade Runner. I'm not really a big sci-fi person, but like the only one I've really seen is Blade Runner. So the color palette, the technology, there's so much world building that went into this. The creator has written blurbs for each card that kind of really explain what's going on within the universe. And I just think it's so cool. I feel like the creator could have like written like a whole book out of this deck. And even just to show even more world building, there is a currency even that exists within this world called Zent. So that's what the pentacles represent. They're called Zents instead of pentacles. And just, I mean, just look at it. It is such a cool deck. And I want a movie. I want a book. Yeah, so here's a Zent card right here. And this is such an amazing deck. It really feels like I am watching a movie, like in my hands. On a similar note, there's also another deck coming out that was on Kickstarter like a couple of months ago called Eldritch Overload. Very similar theme, post-apocalyptic, cyberpunk, robots have taken over the world theme, and of course I got it too. Yeah, so just I'm really hyped for seeing decks like this with world building. So yes, that is the Neon Moon Tarot for my sci-fi deck. The next genre is fantasy, and this was really hard for me because I realized I don't have a lot of fantasy themed tarot decks in my collection. I have the Mermaid Tarot, and I have the deck that I chose for this video, which is the Tarot of Mystical Moments. This deck has such an Alice in Wonderland theme to me, and I say this as someone who has not actually ever seen the cartoon. I've never seen the animated version. I've only ever seen the live action version. So maybe I'm wrong, but in the live action version, this looks kind of similar. It looks like a similar landscape. It looks like a similar dress. It's very whimsical, very fantastical. Yeah, I feel like I've stepped into a very otherworldly fantasy realm when I use this deck. This deck feels like a fantasy world where all of these different mythical creatures and whimsical beings coexist with each other. It feels like a very, this card right here feels very Alice in Wonderland to me. I don't know why. But yeah, it's just very whimsical. I can't really think of any other words to describe this deck except like whimsical is definitely the word for this deck. So yeah, that is the Tarot of Mystical Moments for my fantasy deck. The next genre is drama, and I love me a good, sad, tearjerker drama movie. I love to cry. I especially love like family drama. So the deck I chose was the Slow Tarot. Um, as I've said before, this deck it's realistic, it's slightly grim, but also very emotive. This deck really makes me think and it provokes a lot of emotions from me and it just feels really real. Like I feel like this picture I could see this on like someone's wall, like this is their grandson or something. And I don't know why, but this deck makes me think of the movie The Secret Life of Bees. Like this card especially makes me think of the movie and the book. And I think this movie is probably one of the few like film adaptations that I like just as much as I like the book. But yeah, this deck has a slightly like southern idyllic charm to it that makes me think of that movie and other movies that take place in that setting. It's also still really intense and it definitely feels like it probably would be like an Oscar bait movie if it was real. So that is the Slow Tarot. The next genre is the rom-com genre, and I love me a good rom-com, okay? My favorite is How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days, the best rom-com of all time, just so you know. And the deck I picked is extremely on the nose, like super, super on the nose. It is the Final Rose Tarot, which is a bachelor slash bachelorette themed tarot deck. I know it seems silly, but for what it is actually a very well done deck. It has changed all the suits, it's added keywords, and it really makes an effort to put you in to a season of The Bachelor or The Bachelorette. So I don't really have any movies that I think follow a bachelor slash bachelorette or any dating show theme, but there are a couple of books that are really good that do, and one is called One to Watch, which is about this plus size blogger who gets selected to be the next bachelorette. I mean, they can't call it the Bachelorette in the book because they would get sued, so it's like their version of the Bachelorette. And she gets selected after posting a blog about the lack of diversity on the show. Very fitting I landed on this card while talking about that. And it is really, really good. But probably one of my favorite things that I read. Did I read it last year or was it this year? Maybe it was early this year. Really, really good book. The other book is called The Charm Offensive, which is about this bachelor. Again, they can't actually call it the bachelor in the book, but about this bachelor who ends up falling in love with one of the crew members on the show instead of one of the bachelorette contestants. So both really good books that are about the Bachelor, Bachelorette franchise and would pair really well with this deck. So that is the Final Rose Tarot for my rom-com. Next genre on the list is the indie film, and that's kind of hard because indie movies can be anything. They can be about anything. They can have any sort of aesthetic. But there is one particular aesthetic that I associate with indie movies, and that aesthetic is found in the City Goddesses Tarot. This deck is so charming to me the way that an indie movie is, and it reminds me a lot of the movie Skate Kitchen, and like the people in it, like this girl, like everyone in it looks like they could be a character in that movie. It also got made into a TV show called Betty, which got canceled after like one season, I think. Everything I like gets canceled. But yeah, the movie is about these girls who go skateboarding around New York, and it's just one of those movies, those indie movies that is a coming of age tale that nothing really happens and it's not super plot heavy. And everything about this deck, from the way the people are dressed and their hair and the fact that they do look like they're in New York City. I mean, look at this card right here. Like this card right here is straight out of that movie. And yeah, it just has a very alternative indie flick vibe to it. So that is the City Goddesses Tarot for my indie movie. The next genre is the period piece, and I love period pieces. If it takes place in the Regency, in the 1920s, or the Victorian slash Edwardian era, I will watch it. I will watch it, okay? And the most recent period piece I watched was Emma, the 2020 version with Anya Taylor-Joy, and that should give you a clue to what this deck will be. It is the Tarot of Jane Austen. This deck is sadly out of print. I had to haggle down to get this deck, but I really hope that Lo Scarabeo does a reprint sometime soon. I got this because I love Jane Austen. I was that one gigantic nerd in high school that would read Jane Austen novels outside of English lit class, and I love how each of the stories were chosen for the cards, and I love the way they're all drawn and the emotion that I still am able to feel as if I was actually reading the books or watching the many films. And this deck just puts me in the mind to rewatch Pride and Prejudice. Probably one of my favorite movies of all time. So that is the Tarot of Jane Austen for my period piece. Up next is the old Hollywood classic, and that's another genre that I love. I used to watch TCM all day when I'd be at my grandparents' house over the summer. So the deck choice for this is super on the nose, like very extremely, and it is the Tinseltown Tarot, which came out at some point over the summer, I believe. This deck is all about old Hollywood, 1950s. That looks like Harry Styles, and don't worry, darling. And it's very old Hollywood themed, and I adore it. I think a film for this would be like Sunset Boulevard. I love that movie. And like this card right here makes me think of the show Hollywood, like Laura Harrier's character. That was a recent show on Netflix that's about old Hollywood. And in the show, these different people come together to make a movie about. Let me see if I can find the card because there's a card in this deck that exactly fits like the movie that they were trying to make. But the show was like basically about like old Hollywood politics and the studio system, and it was kind of like a reimagining of like a more progressive Hollywood back in the 50s. And I'm still trying to find this card. Where is it? Okay, here we go. So the movie that they're making in the show is supposed to be about this person here named Peg Entwistle, who was a starlet who jumped off the Hollywood sign. So it's kind of interesting that they actually have that card in the deck, especially for the Hermit. Another thing that this deck reminds me of is the Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. Like this is Evelyn right here. Like this is her. I think that's so cool. So yeah, that is the Tinseltown Tarot for my old Hollywood deck. The next genre is the comedy, and my deck choice for this might seem a bit random, but just stick with me here. So I chose the Real Talk Tarot for my comedy deck, and that is because this deck addresses the impact that social media has on our lives and the way that we interact with each other. And there is actually a dark comedy movie that came out, I think, at some point over the summer called Not Okay that also addresses that. And the lengths that people will go to um maintain fame on social media. It's very funny. And there's a character in this deck, oh, here it is, that looks just like the protagonist in that movie. I mean, the hat, the shirt, the hair color, like that's her. Um, and basically in the movie, the main character pretends to be a part, like pretends to have been at this terrorist attack in Paris. I know it sounds crazy, but it was a very interesting movie, and I think the social commentary in this deck would definitely make a very funny movie. This deck also doesn't take itself very seriously, which also fits the comedy vibe. So yes, that is the Real Talk Tarot for my comedy deck. Up next is the anime movie. And so, okay, I don't want to like start debate by using this specific deck because there has been debate in this fandom over whether this show should count as an anime or not. I don't think it is. It's anime inspired, but the deck I chose is the White Lotus Tarot, which again is an Avatar: The Last Airbender themed deck, and the closest thing to an anime deck that I have in my collection. I'm not really a big fan of all like the anime and manga decks that have been coming out lately. I guess I'm just not really into that art style, but I do love Avatar. I will always love Avatar, and I really like this deck. And of course, the storytelling in it is amazing because the storytelling in Avatar is amazing, and it has some of the best world building in any show that I have ever watched, like quite literally ever. So that is the White Lotus Tarot. Love that card. The White Lotus Tarot for my anime deck. Our last genre is the children's movie, and for this genre, I chose probably the cutest deck to ever exist, the cutest, most sweetest deck ever. I very recently acquired it, and it is just, it speaks to my inner child in a way that I never thought a deck would be able to. So that deck is the Food and Animal Tarot by Maruko. This deck is all about adorable little animals, and they're all paired with food, and it's still in order because I just got it and I want to do a walkthrough soon because I haven't seen any on YouTube yet. And oh my gosh, you guys, this is just I mean, I said it before, this is the cutest deck ever. I'm not really an animal deck person, but I had to get this one. And I'm so glad that I did because I did one reading with it before I had to put it back in order. And oh my gosh, what it like I can't even describe how it made me feel. So I was rendered to tears. I don't even cry when I get readings, but this one did. And this deck, it makes me think of the movie Ratatouille because they're all little chefs. All the animals are little baby creature chefs, and they like when you get later into the minors, like they all run their own little restaurants, their own little bakeries. It's just so cute and so Ratatouille. The food is drawn in a way that makes me think of Studio Ghibli movies, because you know how detailed and beautiful and just really appetizing Studio Ghibli food looks. It looks the exact same way in this deck. So yeah, that is the Food and Animal Tarot by Maruko for my children's movie. So I hope you all enjoyed that. This was a really fun tag to put together. Thank you again, Sarah at Smart Reiki and Tarot, for making this tag. And yeah, I think that's about it. I always say I think, like I know it's about it. That's all I have to say. Anyway, bye.